If someone had told me a careful touch could break every rule I ever filed, I'd have signed out early. I never imagined old folks and their damn crossword puzzles would reroute my life. Yet there I was every Tuesday afternoon at Willowcrest Senior Living in Riverton, playing the benevolent volunteer while really just fleeing the suffocating corporate walls of Right Financial Services, pretending I was some kind of saint. Mara, dear, what's a 6-letter word for intense attraction? Mrs. Abernathy peered at her grid through glasses thick as bottle bottoms. Desire, I said before I could stop myself, and heat climbed my cheeks. At 35, you'd think I'd be done blushing like a teenager. That's when I saw her. Cream silk catching the afternoon light just so, brunette waves spilling past her shoulders, and those green eyes, damn, those eyes. I'd seen her framed in photos on Adrian Wright's desk, of course, but those family portraits did Celeste Wright absolutely no justice. She moved through the senior center like she belonged there, pausing to chat with residents, her smile genuinely warm in a way her husband's never was. Adrian Wright was business, start to finish, cold, calculating, mercilessly efficient at making money. How that man ever married someone who radiated so much warmth was beyond me, beyond comprehension. You must be one of our new volunteers, she said, approaching our table. Her voice had a husky quality that made my stomach do a little flip. I'm Mara Quinn, I managed, standing awkwardly and knocking my knee against the table. I work for your husband, actually. Ah? Something flickered across her expression. Disappointment, maybe. Another one of Adrian's employees doing mandatory community service hours? No, I said, suddenly defensive. This is just me. I like it here. Why was I suddenly defensive, and why did it matter what this woman thought of me? Good, she said simply. Too many people come once for the corporate photo op and never return. We might have stood there staring at each other forever if Mr. Hollis hadn't called out from across the room. The old man was struggling with his pill organizer, tiny white tablets scattered across his lap. We both moved to help him at the same time, our hands colliding over the spilled medication. Her fingers were cool against mine, soft in a way that suggested regular moisturizing and a life free from spreadsheets and keyboard calluses. Something electric passed between us. So cliché, I know, but there it was. A current. A connection. A complication. I've got this, she murmured, not pulling her hand away immediately. You sure? I asked, noticing a wedding ring that probably cost more than my annual salary. Been doing this for years. My grandmother's in the memory care wing, she explained, finally breaking contact to help Mr. Hollis. I watched her methodically sort his medications, speaking to him with patience and dignity rather than the condescending baby talk so many used with the elderly. This wasn't the trophy wife I'd imagined from office gossip. This was someone with depth. Someone who cared. Same time next week? She asked as I gathered my things to leave. Every Tuesday, I confirmed, suddenly looking forward to my volunteer shift in a way I never had before. Good, she said again, this time with a smile that reached those forest green eyes. This place needs more people who actually want to be here. Walking to my car, I tried to shake off the strange feeling in my chest. It was admiration, surely. Just appreciation for someone who shared my commitment to community service. Nothing more. But lying to myself has never been my strong suit, and as I drove home through the Riverton evening, the memory of her fingers against mine replayed in my mind like a song stuck on repeat. I was in trouble, and I knew it. The next few weeks at Willowcrest Senior Living became the highlight of my otherwise monotonous existence. I found myself putting more effort into my appearance on Tuesdays, trading sensible office attire for more flattering options, even brushing on mascara that normally stayed reserved for client meetings. You know my Adrian, Mrs. Wright Sr. asked me one afternoon while I helped her arrange family photos. The resemblance between her and her son was striking, same cold blue eyes, same calculating gaze. I work in his accounting department, I replied carefully, positioning a silver-framed wedding portrait of Adrian and Celeste. They looked like magazine models, him stern and commanding, her smiling but somehow distant. And you know my daughter-in-law, too, I see. The old woman's eyes were shrewd. She comes every day, you know. Every single day, while my son is too busy making money to visit his own mother. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded sympathetically. Celeste deserved better, she continued, adjusting her blanket with gnarled fingers. But don't tell her I said that. Later that afternoon, dark clouds rolled in over Riverton, bringing a sudden summer thunderstorm that rattled the windows of the senior center. I found Celeste in the garden gazebo, watching the rain come down in sheets. "Mind some company?" I asked, stepping under the wooden shelter. She scooted over on the bench, making room. "I love thunderstorms. They make everything feel cleansed afterward." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching lightning split the sky. She seemed different today, more subdued, less the perfect corporate wife. "How long have you been married?" I asked, immediately regretting the intrusion. 8 years, she answered, twisting her wedding ring. "But it feels like 80 sometimes." "I'm sorry," I murmured, not knowing what else to say. "Don't be. I made my choices." She turned to face me fully. "What about you? Anyone special?" I shook my head. "My last relationship ended 2 years ago. She couldn't handle my work schedule." I froze, realizing I just outed myself in the corporate world of Right Financial. I kept my personal life carefully separated. But Celeste didn't even blink at my pronoun use. "Adrian works until midnight most days," she said, her voice barely audible above the rain. "Sometimes I think he married me just to check trophy wife off his life achievements list." The confession hung between us as lightning illuminated her face. In that flash, I saw something raw and honest, a loneliness that mirrored my own. "I don't think anyone who really knows you would see you that way," I said carefully. Her eyes met mine, searching. Then, slowly, deliberately, she moved closer until our shoulders touched. My breath caught as she rested her head against me, her perfume mingling with the smell of rain and wet earth. "Thank you for seeing me, Mara," she whispered. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, watching the storm, neither of us willing to break the spell by speaking again. Her hand found mine in the dim light of the gazebo, fingers intertwining with a gentle pressure that said everything words couldn't. When the rain finally slowed to a drizzle, reality came crashing back. She straightened up, smoothed her skirt, and became Mrs. Right again before my eyes. "I should check on my grandmother," she said, standing up. But at the gazebo steps, she turned back. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face, her fingertips lingering against my cheek. "Same time next week?" she asked, an echo of our first meeting. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I watched her walk away through the glistening garden, I knew I was falling for someone I could never have, the wife of the man who signed my paychecks, a woman who represented every possible complication. And damn if that didn't make me want her even more. Tuesday turned into my ritual. I counted down hours, minutes, seconds until I could slip through Willow Crest Senior Living's sliding doors. Each week I swore the madness would end, and each week I failed spectacularly to take my own advice. "You're glowing lately," my coworker Quinn said over lunch. "Either you've upgraded your skincare or you've met someone." I jabbed at my salad. "Just enjoying the summer." "Who is she?" I shook my head. "There's no one." But there was. Someone who texted me cloud photos shaped like animals. Someone who remembered my coffee order. Someone married to our damn boss. Week after week, Celeste and I staged our accidental encounters at the senior center. We signed up for the same activities, coordinated our breaks, nudged the resident schedule so our visits overlapped. The staff began greeting us as a set. "There's our Tuesday girls," they'd say, and neither of us corrected them. Small, quiet moments piled up like keepsakes, her fingers grazing mine as we passed craft supplies. Our shoulders touching while we read to Mr. Hollis. Parking lot walks that took 3 times longer than they should. "They're celebrating the center's 10th anniversary next week," Celeste said one Tuesday as we watered the garden. "There's going to be dancing." "I have 2 left feet," I warned. "Then I'll have to lead," she answered, with a smile that haunted me for days. The night of the anniversary party, the recreation room was transformed with twinkle lights and streamers. Residents in their finest clothes mingled with families and staff. I wore a blue dress I'd bought specifically for this night, something that made me feel pretty for the first time in years. When Celeste walked in wearing a simple black dress that hugged every curve, the punch cup nearly slipped from my hand. She looked like she'd stepped straight from my dreams into this fluorescent-lit reality. "You came," she said, reaching for my free hand. "Wouldn't miss it." Most of the evening, we helped residents navigate the buffet line or find seats, exchanging glances across the room like conspirators. It was only when the DJ played an old Sinatra tune and most attendees were occupied with cake that she appeared at my side. "Dance with me," she whispered. "People will see." "Not here." She led me down the hall to the dim physical therapy room. The music drifted in faintly, just enough to give us rhythm. Without a word, her arms slipped around my waist and mine found her shoulders. We swayed together in the half-darkness, her cheek against mine, our bodies speaking a language our voices dared not. Her perfume, something with jasmine and vanilla, filled my senses until I felt drunk with it. "I think about you," she confessed against my ear. "All the time, Mara. We can't." "I know." But knowing didn't stop us from dancing closer. Didn't prevent her fingers from tracing patterns on my back. Didn't keep my heart from nearly exploding when she looked at me with those forest green eyes full of want. The song changed to something more upbeat, breaking our trance momentarily. We should have returned to the party. Instead, Celeste took my hand and pulled me toward the supply closet, her intentions crystal clear. "Someone might come looking," I protested weakly. "Let them." The closet was small and smelled of cleaning products. She closed the door behind us, plunging us into darkness save for the sliver of light beneath the door. For a moment, we stood frozen, the magnitude of what we were contemplating hanging between us. "We can walk away," I whispered, giving her an out we both needed but neither wanted. Her answer was to find my face with her hands, thumbs gently tracing my cheekbones. The first brush of her lips against mine was hesitant, questioning. The second was anything but. Years of longing, weeks of tension, dissolved in that kiss. Her mouth was soft, insistent, tasting faintly of the champagne punch. My hands found her hair, pulling her closer as she backed me against the shelving. Supply bottles rattled precariously. "Mara," she breathed against my lips. My name had never sounded so perfect. We broke apart at the sound of footsteps in the hall, reality crashing back like a bucket of ice water. Straightening our clothes, checking for smeared lipstick, we transformed back into volunteer and boss's wife before slipping out separately. But everything had changed. We'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And God help me, all I wanted was to cross it again and again. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. 1 week after kissing his wife in a supply closet, I was sitting across from Adrian Wright while he outlined my new role. "Mara, your work in accounts receivable has been exceptional. I'm moving you directly under me, special projects accountant." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Under you, sir? Effective immediately. 20% salary increase." He didn't smile. Adrian never smiled, but satisfaction sharpened those steel blue eyes. "We'll be working closely. Late nights. Weekends as needed." All I could think about was Celeste's perfume, the softness of her mouth, the way she'd whispered my name in that closet. And now here I was, accepting a promotion from her husband. The irony was thick enough to suffocate me. "Thank you, Mr. Wright. I'm honored." "Adrian," he corrected. "We'll be spending too much time together for formalities." I nodded, feeling the boundary lines of my ethics start to crumble. How could I keep whatever this was with Celeste while working at her husband's side? The answer was obvious: I couldn't. I shouldn't. That resolve lasted exactly 3 hours and 27 minutes, until my doorbell rang. Celeste stood in the hallway with a bottle of wine and a bag of takeout. "Congratulations on the promotion," she said, slipping past me into the apartment before I could process. "How did you know?" "Adrian mentioned it at dinner." She moved through my place like she belonged there, finding glasses, plates, setting them out on my cramped counter. "He says you're brilliant, Mara. We need to talk about." "I know." Vulnerability flickered across her face. "But can we just have tonight? Before we decide it's impossible." She'd brought Thai, my favorite, and uncorked a Cabernet that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. We ate on floor cushions around my coffee table, trading pieces of our lives from before. She'd studied art history, dreamed of museum curation, met Adrian at a charity gala. I told her about being raised by a single mother working 3 jobs, about clawing through accounting school on scholarships and sheer stubbornness. "You amaze me," she said, filling our glasses. "You built your life on your own terms." I laughed, a little sour. "Says the woman in a mansion." "A museum," she corrected. "Perfect, sterile, loveless. Everything is for display. Nothing is to be touched." Her words hung there, an invitation I shouldn't accept. Then she set down her glass and shifted beside me on the couch, her thigh warm against mine. "I haven't felt real in years," she whispered. "Not until you." When she kissed me, it wasn't the frantic, stolen press of the closet. It was deliberate. A choice made with full knowledge of the fallout. My hands found her hair, her waist, the curve of her hip. Her fingers worked the buttons of my blouse with unwavering intent. "Are you sure?" I breathed between kisses. She answered by standing and offering her hand, leading me toward my own bedroom. What followed was everything I'd imagined in my most private hours, and more. Silk-soft skin under my fingers, her sighs ghosting my ear, the way she arched when I touched her just right. We mapped each other with the wonder of new terrain and the urgency of borrowed time, collapsing at last into breathless laughter and a knot of limbs. "Stay," I murmured as she tucked into my shoulder. "Until morning," she promised. Then reality comes back. But reality crashed in earlier than expected. My alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., and I stumbled to the shower in a happy daze. Only to remember I had a 7 a.m. meeting with Adrian Wright to discuss quarterly projections I hadn't reviewed because I'd been too busy making love to his wife. Celeste was still asleep in my bed, her hair spread across my pillow, wearing nothing but my oversized t-shirt. I watched her for a moment, knowing I should feel guilty but finding only a fierce protectiveness instead. As I dressed in my most severe business suit, applying makeup to cover the evidence of too little sleep, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me had crossed a line she could never uncross. There would be consequences. There had to be. But something in her eyes told me she'd make the same choice again. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like the first honest decision I'd made in years. 2 months of dangerous happiness followed. Celeste and I established a delicate balance, weekday evenings when Adrian worked late, occasional weekends when he traveled for business. We became experts at coded text messages and plausible explanations. The only place we felt truly free was my small apartment, our sanctuary from the outside world. Working directly with Adrian was psychological torture. He discussed acquisition strategies while I'd remember the sound of his wife's laughter in my kitchen. He'd compliment my financial models while I'd recall how Celeste had whispered my name in the darkness. The duplicity was eating me alive, yet I couldn't stop. I was addicted to her. To us. To the fragile world we'd created. "I need to tell someone before I explode," I confessed one Sunday morning as we lounged in bed. "Just one person who knows about us." Celeste traced patterns on my bare shoulder, considering. "Who?" "My friend Quinn. She's known me forever. Completely trustworthy." After much discussion, Celeste agreed. Quinn had been asking increasingly pointed questions about my sudden unavailability and mysterious good mood. A partial truth seemed safer than continued evasion. The following weekend, I arranged for us to meet at a small gallery in North Riverton's Arts District. Quinn arrived first, eyebrows raising when I walked in with Celeste. "Quinn, this is Mara," I said carefully. "She's someone special to me." To her credit, Quinn didn't flinch when recognition dawned. "Mrs. Wright," she said evenly. "Interesting." "Just Celeste, please," Celeste replied, extending her hand. The tension was palpable until Quinn finally smiled. "Any friend of Mara's," she conceded, "especially a special one." We spent the afternoon viewing experimental photography exhibits. Quinn gradually warming to Celeste as they discovered shared tastes in art and literature. By the time we left the gallery, the three of us were laughing like old friends. "Want to grab dinner?" Quinn suggested. I glanced at Celeste, who nodded. "Somewhere quiet. I know just the place." The freedom of being out together, not hiding in my apartment or pretending to be casual acquaintances, was intoxicating. Walking through North Riverton's colorful streets, Celeste tentatively took my hand. I froze momentarily, then intertwined my fingers with hers, heart racing. Such a simple gesture, yet it felt revolutionary. "You two are disgustingly cute," Quinn observed, but her smile was genuine. "How long has this been going on?" 2 months, we answered simultaneously, then laughed. "And Adrian?" The question sobered us instantly. Celeste's grip tightened on my hand. "It's complicated," I offered lamely. Quinn gave me her patented, "you know better" look but mercifully dropped the subject. We continued toward the restaurant, our momentary bubble of normalcy restored. That's when I heard them. 3 men stumbling out of a bar ahead, clearly intoxicated despite the early hour. They were loud, aggressive, taking up the entire sidewalk. I moved to guide us around them when one noticed our joined hands. "Well, look at this," he slurred, nudging his companions. "Got ourselves some dykes." I felt Celeste stiffen beside me but kept walking, pulling her forward. Quinn moved protectively to our other side. "Ignore them," I murmured. "Hey, I'm talking to you." The largest man stepped directly into our path. "Your kind make me sick." "Back off," Quinn warned. "Just let us pass." "Or what?" His breath reeked of whiskey and hatred. "You going to call your girlfriend's squad?" It happened so quickly. He shoved me backward, sending me stumbling into Celeste. Quinn moved to intervene only to receive an elbow to her face. Celeste tried to pull me away, but the second man grabbed her arm. "Let go of her," I shouted, lunging forward. Pain exploded in my temple as something, a fist, a bottle, I couldn't tell, connected with my head. I heard Celeste scream, saw Quinn wrestling with one of the men. A crowd was gathering, someone shouting about calling police. I struggled to my feet just as the largest attacker pushed Celeste hard against a brick wall. The sound of her head hitting the masonry triggered something primal in me. I charged him despite my dizziness, catching him off guard enough to knock him sideways. "Run!" Quinn yelled, blood streaming from her nose. But it was too late. The third man swung wildly, catching me across the face. I felt something crack in my wrist as I hit the pavement. Through blurred vision, I saw Celeste crumpled nearby, a crowd finally intervening to subdue our attackers. Sirens wailed in the distance. Celeste's usually perfect hair was matted with blood where she'd hit the wall. Her eyes found mine across the pavement, filled with pain and something else, determination. Defiance. "Stay with me," I whispered, reaching for her despite the stabbing pain in my wrist. Her bloodied fingers stretched toward mine as darkness closed in around my vision. I woke to the sterile smell of hospital disinfectant and the steady beep of monitors. My left arm was immobilized in a cast, and my head throbbed with each heartbeat. The nurse explained I had a broken wrist and a mild concussion. "Lucky," she said, considering what could have happened. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who, honey?" "Celeste. The woman who was with me." The nurse's expression softened. "Next bed over. We put you two together once we realized you came in from the same incident." She pulled back the privacy curtain to reveal Celeste in the adjacent hospital bed. My breath caught painfully in my chest. Her face was swollen, a line of neat stitches running along her hairline. Her normally vibrant eyes were closed, dark lashes stark against too pale skin. "Is she?" "Stable. Concussion worse than yours. Some facial lacerations. She'll need monitoring." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by guilt. This was my fault. If I hadn't insisted on going out, on telling Quinn, on holding her hand in public. "She's been asking for you," the nurse added. "Every time she wakes up." That broke me. Tears I'd been holding back since the attack finally spilled over. The nurse patted my shoulder sympathetically before leaving us alone. "Mara?" I called softly. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, then opened slowly. Those green eyes found mine, and she attempted a smile that clearly caused her pain. "There you are," she whispered. "I'm so sorry," I choked out. "This is all my fault." She shook her head minutely, then winced at the movement. "Don't you dare." "But if we hadn't, no." Her voice was stronger now, determined despite her injuries. "Their hatred is not our responsibility." We fell silent, the gravity of what had happened settling over us. Hospital noises continued around us, the squeak of nurse shoes, distant announcements, the hum of equipment keeping track of our damaged bodies. "Can you reach me?" she finally asked. I turned carefully, extending my uninjured arm across the space between our beds. She did the same, our fingertips barely touching. It wasn't enough, but it was something. "Quinn?" she questioned. "Treated and released. Broken nose." She texted that she's coming back to check on us later. Celeste nodded slightly. "Good." The day passed in a haze of pain medication, police statements, and medical examinations. No one questioned why we wanted to remain in the same room or why I was listed as Celeste's emergency contact rather than her husband. Small mercies. That evening, a nurse helped me into a wheelchair so I could sit properly beside Celeste's bed. We shared the unappetizing hospital dinner from her tray, me awkwardly managing with my right hand, her struggling to sit upright without triggering waves of dizziness. "Let me," I said, spearing a piece of mystery meat and bringing it to her lips. She accepted my offering, and I wiped a drop of sauce from the corner of her mouth. Such an intimate gesture, born of necessity but feeling like a declaration. "We match," she said, gently touching my bandaged temple that mirrored her own injuries. "Battle scars. Worth it?" Her eyes held mine steadily. "Every second with you has been worth it." I fed her another bite, emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "Even this?" "Even this." She caught my hand in hers. "Maybe especially this." That's the concussion talking. "No." She closed her eyes briefly, summoning strength. "I've been living half a life, Mara. Pretending to be someone I'm not in a marriage that exists only on paper. It took getting my head cracked open to see clearly." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done pretending. I'm leaving Adrian." The words hung in the air between us, both terrifying and exhilarating. I knew what this would mean: scandal, financial uncertainty, potential career implosion for me. But looking at her battered face, her unwavering determination, none of that seemed to matter. "Are you sure?" I asked, needing her to be certain. She answered by pulling me closer, ignoring her 4 lines and my awkward cast, and placing the softest kiss on my lips. It tasted of hospital jello and promise. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," she whispered against my mouth. "Life's too short and too precious to waste another day." The door opened then, a doctor entering to check Celeste's vitals. We didn't jump apart, didn't scramble to hide what we were to each other. Something fundamental had shifted in that sterile hospital room. We were done hiding. We should have known the calm wouldn't hold. 3 days into our hospital stay, the door to our shared room slammed open so hard the handle punched a dent into the wall. Adrian Wright stood in the doorway, his usually impeccable veneer frayed, eyes wild with a tangle of emotions I couldn't fully read. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his gaze ricocheting between Celeste's injuries and my protective perch at her bedside. We'd been playing gin rummy with the deck Quinn brought, my cast-covered arm awkwardly fanning cards while Celeste kept score, and the domestic tableau clearly told him everything he needed to know. "Adrian," Celeste said evenly, though I felt her fingers tremble in mine. "I was going to call you today." "Really?" "Because your mother-in-law had to hear from her nurse that her daughter-in-law was attacked with," he shot me a look of undisguised contempt. "Her accountant." "Mr. Wright," I began, professionalism kicking in on reflex. "Don't," he snapped, slicing the air with his hand. "I trusted you with company finances, with confidential information, with a position in my inner circle." "This isn't about Mara," Celeste cut in, her voice steadier than at any time since the attack. "This is about us, Adrian. About our marriage. About the fact we've been strangers living in the same house for years." His face darkened. "So you chose to work through our issues by sleeping with my employee? By humiliating me across Riverton's business community?" "No one knows," I said. "Everyone knows." He exploded. "Your little outing in North Riverton made the local news, CEO's wife assaulted in hate crime." My phone hasn't stopped ringing. Celeste went pale but didn't back down. "I'm sorry you found out like this. It wasn't how we planned it." "Planned?" He barked a bitter laugh. "You've been planning this?" "Not the attack," I said, shock giving way to heat. "But yes. Celeste was going to tell you. About us. About wanting a divorce." The word landed like a live grenade. In an instant, rage drained into calculation. The businessman replaced the wounded husband. "A divorce," he repeated, straightening his tie, collecting himself. "Do you understand what you're giving up? The house. The lifestyle. The social standing." "I understand exactly what I'm choosing," she answered, reaching for my hand again. His eyes narrowed at the gesture. "And you, Mara, do you grasp what this means professionally? No firm in Riverton will touch you after this. You'll be blacklisted from every financial institution in the Southeast." The threat landed exactly as intended, ice flooding my veins. My career, everything I'd worked for, gone in an instant. But looking at Celeste, her face still bruised but her expression resolute, I found my voice then. "I'll move. We'll move. There's more to life than Riverton." Bold words from someone who grew up with nothing, he sneered. "We'll see how long your passion lasts when you're struggling to pay rent." Get out, Celeste said quietly. When he didn't move, she repeated it louder. Get out, Adrian. Now. A nurse appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. Is there a problem here? These patients need rest. Adrian smoothed his expression into corporate politeness. No problem. I was just leaving. At the door, he turned back. Expect my attorney's call, Mara. I won't make this easy. After he left, I collapsed back into the visitor's chair, my injured wrist throbbing in time with my racing heart. Celeste's face had gone ashen. He's right, I whispered. I'll never work in finance here again. Are you having second thoughts? Her voice was small, vulnerable in a way that broke my heart. I moved to perch carefully on the edge of her bed, mindful of her 4 lines. About you? Never. About the challenges ahead? Honestly, yes. She nodded slowly. I have money of my own. From before Adrian. Not a fortune, but enough to start over. I don't want your money, I insisted. I want a partnership. Then we'll figure it out together. She traced the edge of my cast with gentle fingers. One day at a time. The hospital room felt smaller suddenly, the future simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Everything was about to change. My career. Her marriage. Our lives, completely upended. Yet sitting there, holding her hand amid the antiseptic smells and fluorescent lighting, I felt more certain than I had in years. Come what may, we would face it together. The October afternoon I helped Celeste move into my apartment was surreal. 3 suitcases and 5 cardboard boxes, the sum total of what she'd taken from her former life. The divorce proceedings had begun, ugly and contentious as Adrian had promised, but at least she was here now. Away from the coldness of that mansion. Is this really enough space for your clothes? I joked, eyeing my modest closet as she hung designer dresses next to my practical office wear. You'd be surprised what you can live without, she replied, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly as she arranged her toiletries in the bathroom we'd now share. The reality of our situation hit in waves. I'd lost my job as predicted. Adrian had made certain no financial firm would touch me, spreading rumors of embezzlement and ethical violations that, while untrue, were enough to make me unemployable in my field. Celeste had walked away from a life of luxury into my 1-bedroom apartment with its temperamental plumbing and noisy neighbors. Having regrets? I asked that evening as we sat among half-unpacked boxes, eating takeout pizza directly from the box. She considered the question, taking her time before answering. I miss certain comforts, she admitted. But not enough to trade this for that empty life. She gestured around our humble living room. This feels real. You feel real. That first week was an adjustment. She'd never operated a coin laundry machine, never calculated if she had enough cash for groceries until payday. I'd never shared my space so completely with another person, never had to consider someone else's routines and preferences in my daily life. But there were beautiful discoveries, too, Celeste singing in the shower, her voice surprisingly melodious. The way she arranged flowers from the corner bodega to bring life to my apartment. How she curled against me while sleeping, fitting perfectly into the curves of my body. I found contract work through Quinn's connections, nothing permanent, nothing in finance, but enough to keep us afloat while Celeste began exploring opportunities in museum education. Our life was smaller now, confined to fewer square feet and tighter budgets, but somehow infinitely larger in possibility. Let's create new traditions, Celeste suggested one Sunday morning as we lingered over coffee. Things that are just ours. So began our Sunday ritual, homemade breakfast followed by a walk through Freedom Park, regardless of weather. We started collecting quirky mugs from thrift stores, one for each month we were together. Small traditions, tiny anchors in our new shared life. As autumn deepened, the leaves turning brilliant shades of crimson and gold, Celeste received her first paycheck from the community art center where she'd found work teaching children's classes. We celebrated with a bottle of wine that cost exactly 1/10 what she used to spend without thinking. To financial independence, she toasted, clinking her glass against mine. To new beginnings, I countered. That night, with rain pattering against the windows and the first real chill of fall in the air, our lovemaking took on a new dimension. The desperate passion of our early secret encounters had evolved into something deeper, a physical conversation between two people building a life together despite every obstacle. Her fingers traced the faded scar at my temple, a souvenir from the attack that had changed everything. My lips followed the healed line of stitches at her hairline. Our bodies remembered the pain but transformed it into tenderness, creating something beautiful from the broken pieces. I never want to forget this feeling, she whispered against my skin as we moved together in the darkness, her body arching beneath mine. Later, tangled in sheets and each other, we planned a weekend getaway to the mountains, a tiny cabin near Ashbury. Nothing fancy, but away from Riverton and its judgments. Away from the divorce proceedings and job rejections. Just us in the trees, Celeste murmured sleepily. No past. No complications. The following Friday, we loaded my aging Honda with backpacks and groceries, a weekend's worth of freedom awaiting us in the Blue Ridge Mountains. As Riverton's skyline receded in the rearview mirror, I felt Celeste's hand slip into mine on the center console. No regrets? I asked, glancing at her profile against the backdrop of passing scenery. She smiled, the autumn sunlight catching in her hair. Not a single one. Spring rolled into Riverton, a renewal that echoed our own. 6 months after everything changed, the divorce was finally finalized, Adrian, in the end, more fixated on appearances than on vengeance. Celeste received a modest settlement, just enough to give us breathing room while I built a new path as an independent bookkeeper for small businesses. Ready for this? Celeste asked, squeezing my hand as we neared the familiar sliding doors of Willowcrest Senior Living. I nodded, even as my stomach twisted with nerves. We hadn't returned since it all happened, since our relationship went public, since the attack, since our lives were completely rearranged. Mrs. Wright Sr.'s birthday celebration had pulled us back despite Adrian's objections. She'd insisted on seeing Celeste and, by extension, me. The old woman shocked everyone by being entirely unfazed by the scandal. Adrian was always too concerned with appearances, she'd told Celeste on their phone calls. Besides, you're still my daughter-in-law until those papers are signed. The staff welcomed us warmly, many exclaiming over how well we both looked compared to our last public appearance, in hospital beds with matching head injuries. If there were whispers about us, the scandal that had rocked Riverton's business community, they didn't reach our ears. There are my Tuesday girls. Mr. Hollis called from his usual spot, though it was Saturday and we hadn't been Tuesday girls for months. The recreation room was decorated with balloons and streamers for the birthday celebration. In the corner, Mrs. Wright Sr. held court from her wheelchair, imperious as ever despite her advancing years. About time, she declared when we approached. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten how to find the place. Happy birthday, Lillian, Celeste said, bending to kiss her cheek. The old woman grasped my hand with surprising strength. So you're the one who finally gave my daughter-in-law some backbone. Good. She needed it. I laughed, tension draining from my shoulders. She had plenty of backbone. I just provided the opportunity. The afternoon passed pleasantly, the familiar rhythms of the senior center wrapping around us like a comfortable sweater. We helped serve cake, joined in singing happy birthday, caught up with residents we'd grown to care for during our volunteer days. Later, as residents began returning to their rooms for afternoon rest, Lillian Wright motioned us closer to her wheelchair. I have something for you too, she said, removing a small velvet pouch from her cardigan pocket. Been holding on to these for decades. She emptied 2 rings into Celeste's palm, delicate bands of intertwining gold and silver, clearly antique, clearly valuable. These were my grandmother's, then my mother's. Never felt right giving them to Adrian's bride. Until now. Her sharp blue eyes, so like her son's yet somehow warmer, fixed on us. Consider it my blessing. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. Lillian, we can't, of course you can. I'm old, not blind. I see how you look at each other. She patted Celeste's hand. Use them as you see fit. We left the senior center in stunned silence, the weight of the rings in Celeste's purse both physical and metaphorical. Neither of us spoke until we reached the garden gazebo, where all those months ago we'd first allowed ourselves to acknowledge what was growing between us. Full circle, I murmured, taking a seat on the weathered bench. Celeste joined me, drawing the velvet pouch from her purse. What do you think she meant? Use them as you see fit? I think she was being deliberately ambiguous. The spring air was sweet with flowering trees and new possibilities. Through the gazebo's lattice walls, I could see senior center residents watching from the windows, including Lillian herself. I never imagined this, Celeste said softly, opening the pouch and examining the rings. Any of this. Losing everything I thought defined me and gaining everything that actually matters. She placed one ring in my palm, closing my fingers over it. The metal was warm from her touch. Whatever these symbolize, friendship, commitment, a promise, I want to wear one if you'll wear the other, she said. I examined her face, the laugh lines that had deepened over our months together, the small scar at her hairline that matched my own, the certainty in her green eyes. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Her smile was radiant. I'm asking if you'll promise me the future, whatever it looks like. With trembling fingers, I slipped the ring onto her left hand, and she did the same for me. Simple as that. Profound as everything. Behind us, a faint cheer drifted from the senior center windows. Always our biggest fans, I joked, tipping my head toward our elderly audience. To new beginnings, Celeste said, echoing our toast from months ago. When her lips met mine beneath the gazebo where our story began, I knew with complete certainty that sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what matters most.